My daughter Joanna insisted she was thriving, her voice on the video call painting a picture of domestic bliss with Todd, the supposed kindest man alive. Yet, the image flickering on my screen screamed a silent, desperate contradiction. Beneath the forced curve of her lips, a chilling vacancy resided in her eyes, dull and lifeless as lamps, abruptly switched off, and her skin possessed a sickly fluorescent pallor that spoke more of sterile hospital corridors than contented, newlywed life. She recounted Todd's supposed devotion, coffee delivered bedside, a shield against household chores, chauffeuring her through rain, brewing restorative broths when illness struck. He even, apparently, performed a goofy husband dance to dispel her moods. I manufactured a smile, sculpting my features into maternal warmth, all while my knuckles whitened, gripping the phone's edge as if it were a lifeline I feared might snap. That luminescence wasn't fairness. It was the bleached-out look of persistent strain. This marked a third instance she'd claimed the flu necessitated a hospital visit, the explanation flimsy and worn. Prior episodes involved a sudden stomach bug, then a supposed tumble downstairs. Utterly incongruous for Joanna, a woman so inherently cautious she'd clutch a handrail descending even a minor step. A fall seemed impossible, fabricated, and stomach discomfort severe enough for intravenous fluids, rationalized away as mere overindulgence in dessert. Decades of motherhood had honed my senses. I recognized the strained melody of a falsehood sung purely to deflect concern. A lie interwoven with threads of guilt and fear. "Don't always leap to the worst, Mom," she'd offered, a faint, brittle laugh accompanying the words. "Honestly, I'm fine. Stop your overthinking." I gave a slight nod, a deliberate restraint, refusing to probe. Silence, I hoped, might encourage continuation, allowing me to gather fragments, piece together the disjointed puzzle. But she proved swifter than anticipated. Barely 3 minutes elapsed before she curtailed the conversation with a subdued, "I should find something to eat. Let's chat later." The instant the screen turned dark, an oppressive weight settled onto my sternum. My gut churned with conviction. I didn't believe a syllable. She proclaimed happiness, yet her entire being radiated a profound, hidden sorrow. That evening, seeking perhaps validation or simply another perspective, I contacted my son, Jason. He answered distractedly, the clicking cadence of game controller buttons forming an unwelcome counterpoint to our conversation. "Mom, seriously, you're spinning scenarios," he began, his tone laced with casual dismissal. "Joanna's told you repeatedly Todd treats her like gold. They're doing great. But she's perpetually in the hospital, Jason," I countered, the words tight. "Doesn't that register as odd to you?" "She's always been a bit delicate," he retorted, a shrug audible in his voice. "Remember her childhood? Constant stomach issues. It's just her constitution." A dismissive chuckle followed. "Besides, I know Todd. The guy's socially awkward, painfully shy, hurting someone. Definitely not his style." I offered no reply, letting the silence hang. He, absorbed in his game, didn't perceive the gravity. He chuckled again. "Hold on, you're not seriously considering driving all the way over there, are you? That's, what, a 3-hour haul?" "Yes," I stated, the single word carrying the weight of my resolve. "I am considering precisely that." His gaming sound ceased abruptly. The lightness vanished from his tone. "Wait, Mom, you can't be serious." "Jason, this transcends melodrama," I insisted, my hand resting on the bus ticket. I'd already printed, its crisp edges stark beneath the cool kitchen light. "She is my daughter. A mother possesses an instinct, an innate understanding when her child is dissembling, akin to how a migrating bird senses an impending shift in the wind. But she specifically told you not to visit," he protested. "She told me she's fine," I cut in sharply. Then she implored me not to worry, 3 distinct times, and with each assurance, her gaze flickered away just a fraction more noticeably. A beat of silence passed. When Jason spoke again, his voice had shed its earlier carelessness, now softer, tinged with reluctant concern. "Just Be cautious, okay, Mom? The following dawn arrived shrouded in gray determination. I divulged my plans to no one, least of all Joanna. I boarded a long-distance coach bound for Cedar Falls, traveling with deliberate lightness to avoid suspicion. Merely 3 changes of clothing, a compact notebook for observations, and my familiar black handbag. Within its worn leather confines lay some emergency cash, my driver's license, and an intangible but far heavier asset: 3 decades of accumulated maternal intuition. She'd assured me of her well-being, yet resided in a hospital. He'd claimed she fell, yet she limped perceptibly on screen. She'd attributed it all to misfortune, yet her eyes mirrored the wide, glossy terror of a cornered animal. The truth remained unspoken, veiled by her desire to shield me from anxiety. But sleep would remain elusive until I unearthed that truth myself. Thus, I embarked on its pursuit. Upon arrival in Cedar Falls, I bypassed her apartment complex directly, opting instead for anonymity. I secured a room in a modest motel situated strategically across the street. The clerk at the front desk offered a generic, cheerful greeting. "Enjoying a little escape, ma'am?" I returned a thin smile. "Just visiting my daughter." A partial truth, as I harbored profound uncertainty about even gaining access to her. Her residence, Willow Creek Apartments, projected an image of upscale security. Cameras bristled at every corner. A uniformed doorman presided over the lobby. Uninvited entry seemed improbable. Patience, however, was a resource I possessed in abundance. I settled onto the wrought iron chair of a cafe patio opposite the building, ordering a latte, milk, no sugar, and commenced my vigil, nursing the lukewarm drink while my gaze remained fixed on the imposing entrance. An hour dissolved into the slow descent of the afternoon sun. No glimpse of Joanna. I risked a text message. "What are you up to, sweetheart?" Her reply materialized almost instantly, jarringly prompt. "Working late again, Mom. Don't fret about me." Yet, my unwavering observation of that front entrance confirmed she hadn't emerged all day. Not even a fleeting shadow crossed the threshold. As dusk deepened into night, around 9 p.m., I repositioned myself, standing directly on the building's front steps, my focus unwavering, eyes locked on the doorway, fearing even a blink might cause me to miss something crucial. The tense silence was abruptly shattered by a voice from behind, husky, sharp-edged, dripping with suspicion. "Hey, you conducting surveillance? FBI or something?" Startled, I spun around to face an elderly woman clad in pajama bottoms, fuzzy slippers, and an incongruously elegant silk robe, her silver hair piled high in a precarious bun. In one hand, she clutched a cat leash, conspicuously empty. "Excuse me?" I stammered. She squinted, subjecting me to a prolonged, appraising stare, then leaned closer conspiratorially. "Or maybe, private investigator? I've been clocking you since this afternoon, honey. Even Mrs. Henderson's yappy terrier doesn't stake out this joint with your level of dedication." An unexpected bubble of laughter escaped me. "No, I'm just—" She clapped her hands together decisively. "Say no more. Full support if you're here to nail a philanderer. My lips are sealed. Cannot stand that fellow in 4B. Always skulking on his balcony late at night. Chain smoking like he owns the airspace. Entire floor reeks of stale ash." The absurdity, mingled with her unexpected solidarity, prompted another genuine laugh, the first authentic one in 2 tense days. She extended a hand, bony but firm. "Margie Thompson, retired educator, vice president, Neighborhood Gossip Syndicate, coffee aficionado, proud purveyor of pertinent information in the noble pursuit of justice." I grasped her hand. "Madison Dawson, I'm here. To safeguard my daughter. And I'm desperately trying to ascertain the truth." Something shifted in Margie's expression then. Her gaze sharpened, ignited by a spark of sudden comprehension. "Your daughter? She lives here?" Her tone softened perceptibly. I nodded, offering no further details. She plopped down onto the cool stone steps beside me, her expression turning thoughtful. I knew something felt off with that unit lately. My breath hitched. What did you hear?" She leaned in again, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Last Wednesday, perhaps. Deep in the night, maybe 2 a.m. Went for water, didn't latch the balcony door securely. Heard voices drifting from outside. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Initially sounded like a typical couple spat, but then hesitation clouded her features, her voice lowering further. Then it ceased sounding like a disagreement. Another pause, her face tightening with remembered distress. There was a sound, like something heavy crashing, and a woman's voice, sobbing, begging. My fingers curled involuntarily, nails digging into my palms. Margie turned, her gaze meeting mine, gentler now. Your daughter? She's the reserved one, isn't she? Long dark hair, keeps mostly to herself, doesn't interact much. I nodded mutely. Margie sighed, a sound heavy with empathy. She struck me as the type to internalize her suffering. It's a crying shame. This building flaunts its luxury, but believe me, it harbors plenty of men in expensive suits with hearts full of rot. A sharp sting pricked behind my eyes. Margie gave my knee a comforting pat. But you're here now. You've done the proper thing. My own mobility isn't what it once was, but my hearing network is extensive. I patrol this perimeter with my currently absent feline companion, thrice daily. I'm aware of every houseplant's watering schedule. The image, combined with her earnestness, coaxed another laugh from me, this time tinged with relief. She grinned back. I'll be stationed out front, tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. sharp, catching the early rays. Need intel? Just locate me. Thank you, Margie, truly. No thanks necessary. Merely fulfilling my civic duty for justice, she declared, sitting up straighter with mock solemnity. Then, leaning in conspiratorially once more, she whispered, but seriously, that man, he radiates bad energy. Total creep show. Knew he was trouble from the get-go. Even his eyebrows have that distinct made-for-TV villain arch. I laughed again, the sound lighter this time. For the first moment, since arriving in this unnerving city, I didn't feel entirely isolated in my fear. Sleep was impossible that night. I didn't return to the anonymous quiet of the motel room. Instead, I sought refuge in the perpetual twilight of a nearby 24-hour diner, the air thick with the aroma of stale coffee and fried food. The fluorescent lighting overhead was dim, yet sufficient to illuminate the small, crumpled sticky note clutched in my hand. On it, scribbled hastily, was Joanna's apartment access code, a string of digits she'd mentioned casually months ago, something I'd jotted down automatically, never imagining a scenario where I'd actually employ it. But the insistent voice in my head, the one that had whispered unease during our video call, now resonated with chilling clarity. She wasn't merely unhappy. She was actively concealing a deep well of suffering. My purpose here had crystallized. I wasn't just seeking truth anymore. I was here to extract her. I lost count of the surveillance hours logged the following day, my vigil punctuated only by lukewarm diner coffee refills. Perhaps on my 7th circuit past the imposing Willow Creek entrance, Margie materialized beside me, a gentle tap on my arm accompanying her hushed report. He's departed. Dark gray suit, keys jingling, seemed rushed, left shoe was untied. I looked up, meeting her gaze. She appeared even more invigorated than the previous day, clad in a neat sweater, a subtle waft of floral perfume clinging to her. You planning on going in? She inquired, her eyes bright with anticipation. I nodded, committing the sequence of numbers from the sticky note to memory, the paper now feeling like a talisman. Margie leaned closer, her voice dropping conspiratorially. 30 minutes. If you're not back out in 30, I'm dialing 911. And don't you worry about me being trigger-happy. I hold the distinction of being the only resident in this building with 2 officially documented police reports filed. A weak, tremulous smile touched my lips. That makes you my most dependable backup, Margie. Crossing the street, my palms grew slick with nervous perspiration. The metal keypad felt cold beneath my trembling fingers as I punched in the code. The distinct click of the lock releasing sent a jolt through me. I momentarily forgot the simple act of drawing breath. Inside, The hallway stretched before me, eerily silent, enveloped in a thick, plush carpet that muffled all sound, like traversing a tunnel lined with heavy velvet. The elevator's ascent felt agonizingly protracted, each floor marker lighting up with excruciating slowness. My own heartbeat thudded heavily in my ears. Reaching her floor, I paused outside apartment 4B, gathering my resolve. Then, foregoing any knock, I keyed in the code again. The door swung inward, revealing an apartment submerged in gloom. The sole illumination emanated from the faint blue glow of an air purifier humming softly in a corner. Heavy curtains were drawn tight, sealing out the daylight, contributing to the stale, oppressive atmosphere thick with the cloying scent of old medicine and something else, something subtly decomposing. On the coffee table sat a bowl containing the dried caked remnants of soup, a few stray strands of hair clinging disturbingly to the rim. One of the sofa cushions sagged deeply, its edges frayed and worn. A profound sense of lifelessness permeated the space. On the wall, a wedding photograph hung slightly askew. Joanna's smile in the picture was stiff, artificial, while Todd stared directly into the camera lens with an expression devoid of affection. It was possessive, guarded, like a man protecting a prized, albeit damaged, possession. With hesitant steps, I pushed open the bedroom door. Joanna sat perched on the edge of the bed, motionless, her back towards me. Her hair, usually meticulously kept, hung in a tangled, unkempt cascade over her shoulders. A thick bandage encircled her right ankle, the flesh around it visibly swollen and discolored. Her hands clutched the edge of the blanket with a desperate intensity, as if it were the sole anchor preventing her from drifting away entirely. "Joanna?" I whispered her name, the sound barely audible in the heavy silence. When she turned, the sight nearly shattered my composure. Her face was gaunt, her lips drained of all color. Beneath her left eye, a sickening yellow-green bruise lingered, a fading but stark testament to violence. And her eyes, those soft gray eyes I knew so well, were utterly vacant, dulled to the flat, lifeless gray of cold ash. Yet, the moment her gaze registered my presence, that profound numbness fractured. Raw panic surged into the void, flooding her features. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her voice was a rough rasp, like sandpaper grating against stone. I moved forward instinctively, gently reaching to embrace her. She flinched, recoiling slightly, her body tensing. "You can't be here," she stammered, her words tumbling out in a panicked rush. "If he finds out, he'll lose it. He'll go absolutely insane." "Joanna," I murmured, cupping her face between my hands, forcing her to meet my gaze. "Listen to me. You are not safe in this place. You cannot remain here, isolated like this, a moment longer." Her head bowed then, and tears began to fall, silent, heavy drops splashing onto the back of my hand. "He locks the door," she whispered, the confession barely audible. From the outside, unplugged the landline. "My phone? He monitors it. Only lets me call approved numbers." Her voice trembled. "The hospital FaceTimes. That's the only reason he permits them. He knows there are witnesses there, people around. Why didn't you call the police?" The question escaped me, laced with anguish. "I tried." Her voice dropped so low I had to lean in to hear. "But he convinced them, told them I was unstable. When the officers offered me water, he slipped something into it. My sedatives." Her breath hitched. "Then he made me sign a guardianship consent form. Threatened me. Said if I didn't comply, I'd be institutionalized." As she recounted this, she buried her face deeper into the blanket, seeking refuge in its folds. I was burning with fever. The nurse brought stacks of forms. He stood right there, hovering, watching my every move. I couldn't even decipher what I was signing. Her voice broke. Later, when I resisted, he brandished those papers. Claimed I'd granted him legal authority as my psychiatric guardian. Said he could have me committed involuntarily. The room seemed to tilt, the floor unsteady beneath my feet. He hadn't merely inflicted physical wounds. He had meticulously constructed an invisible cage, woven from legal jargon and feigned concern, polished to appear legitimate. She was ensnared in a trap built of paperwork and deceit. 2 weeks ago, she continued, her body trembling violently now, he pushed me down the stairs. The admission hung in the air, heavy and horrifying. Told the doctor I was just clumsy. But the doctor, I think he knew. And Todd warned me, if I uttered a word, he'd arrange for someone to harm you. Her lips quivered uncontrollably. Mom, I was utterly terrified. I believed he was capable of it. I couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to you. I reached up, gently smoothing her tangled hair back from her face. You don't need to carry that fear anymore, sweetheart. He cannot touch me. You did everything within your power, Joanna. You are far stronger than you realize. And now I am here. I will shield you. Her voice, thick with tears, trembled. I went to the hospital once after that, but he coerced the doctor into signing a confidentiality agreement. One of the nurses, she managed to slip me a copy of the preliminary report. I hid it. My focus sharpened instantly. Where is it, Joanna? She hesitated for a moment, then gestured weakly towards the nightstand. I opened the drawer and tucked away in the back beneath a faded silk scarf, I found a torn, crumpled manila folder. Inside lay a worn medical report, dated 2 weeks prior. The text was brief but damning. Right ankle fracture. Evidence consistent with external force trauma. I folded the document with meticulous care and slid it securely into my handbag. Get your shoes on. Take my coat. We are leaving this place, right now. She blinked, bewildered. Now? Yes, immediately. Margie is creating a diversion at the front desk. I draped my coat over her thin shoulders, then grabbed a scarf from the couch, wrapping it gently around her neck. She attempted to stand but gasped, crying out in pain, her entire body seizing up. I can't walk. Her voice broke, thick with despair. Mom, I can't even stand up. I glanced at the clock ticking ominously on the wall, hesitated for only a fraction of a second, then crouched down before her. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength, I lifted her onto my back. Just as we reached the apartment door, the distinct ding of an elevator arriving echoed down the silent hallway, immediately followed by a harsh, discordant buzzing sound. The digital display above the elevator doors flashed. Out of service. Maintenance. My jaw tightened. Without a word, I turned towards the emergency stairwell. One step at a time, I began the descent, carrying my daughter's fragile weight. Each flight felt like driving another heavy nail into my own spine. My arms quivered with exertion, my breath coming in ragged bursts, yet my resolve had never felt more absolute. Her cheek rested against my shoulder, and in a whisper barely louder than breath itself, she murmured, "I'm so sorry, Mom." I bit down hard on my lip, fighting back tears. All I could manage in response was, "You're my daughter, Joanna. You never, ever have to apologize for needing help." And so, I carried her, my girl, whose laughter used to flow so freely, now battered and bruised, away from the suffocating facade she'd been told constituted a marriage. We reached the lobby, the exit tantalizingly close. As I moved to push through the heavy glass doors, the front desk clerk called out, "Ma'am, are you quite all right? You look rather unwell." I forced a shaky, unconvincing smile. "Thank you for asking. This is my daughter." She experienced a sudden drop in blood sugar, just taking her home to rest. He seemed poised to inquire further, his brow furrowed with concern, when Margie swept in, a whirlwind of feigned urgency and flamboyant gestures. "Susan, there you are. Finally made it out. Come along now. I've been waiting an absolute age," she boomed, her voice echoing cheerfully through the lobby. Then, turning abruptly to the clerk, effectively capturing his full attention, she exclaimed, "Young man, could you possibly assist me? I fear my precious whiskers might have slipped out the back service door again. You know how astonishingly quick that feline is." While the clerk was thus thoroughly distracted, I half-carried, half-limped Joanna through the doors, one arm securely around her back, the other guiding us swiftly around the corner to where my prearranged rental car awaited. I opened the back door, gently easing her into the seat. She clung tightly to my arm, her eyes squeezed shut, lips barely moving. "Mom, Mom, you truly came," she whispered, the words freighted with disbelief and relief. I tucked the blanket more securely around her shivering form and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I swear to you, sweetheart," I vowed, my voice low but fierce, "no one is ever going to hurt you again." 10 minutes later, blissfully unaware, Todd returned to the apartment building. He was humming a cheerful tune, swinging a bag of takeout from a local restaurant. He tapped his code into the keypad, pushed the door open, and called out, "Joanna!" Silence answered him. Stepping into the bedroom, he froze. The blanket was missing from the bed. The closet door gaped open, shelves barren. Drawers stood empty. The manila folder, the one containing the report he thought he controlled, still rested on the coffee table, but its crucial contents had vanished. His face contorted, darkening incrementally, his fists clenching at his sides until the knuckles showed white. "Joanna!" His voice thundered through the empty apartment, loud and furious, bouncing off the walls. But this time, there was no one left to hear, no one left to answer his rage. I drove steadily, leaving Cedar Falls and its suffocating atmosphere behind us, heading towards Spring Hill, the place we'd called home for over 2 decades. It was a town so diminutive, it lacked even a single Starbucks, yet it possessed the calmest night skies and the most breathable familiar air. I could navigate every street, anticipate every turn, blindfolded. Joanna sat beside me in the passenger seat, enveloped in a profound silence throughout the journey. Her face remained turned towards the window, the rushing wind teasing strands of her hair, yet nothing could disperse the heavy shadow that lingered deep within her eyes. By the time we reached our destination, the sky was beginning its slow bleed into the soft hues of dusk. My house is an old, unassuming structure, a 2-bedroom cottage I'd painstakingly renovated myself over the years. It's simple, quiet, boasting a small, thriving vegetable garden in the backyard. Joanna used to lament the non-existent Wi-Fi signal out here, but now, standing hesitantly in the familiar doorway, resembling a small bird that had barely survived a storm to find its nest, she uttered no complaints. She simply leaned against the doorframe, her gaze sweeping across the comforting, unchanged space for a long, quiet moment. I changed the linens on her bed, preparing it with fresh sheets, and made her favorite creamy chicken soup, exactly the way she'd adored it as a child. She managed one small bowl, refusing anything more. That night, she didn't retreat to the guest bedroom. Instead, she curled up on the old overstuffed sofa nestled in the corner of my own room, cocooned in a thick blanket, and eventually drifted into an uneasy sleep. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by the sound of her murmuring, distressed sounds emanating from the sofa. I moved closer, straining to decipher the fragmented words. Her voice was faint, broken. Don't lock the door, I promise. I won't run." I sat down gently on the edge of the sofa beside her, took her cold hand in mine, and remained there, vigilant, for the remainder of the night, my own eyes refusing to close. The next morning, I took her to the small community clinic in town. The nurse on duty was Tracy, an old and trusted friend, sharp-tongued, possessing even sharper instincts, someone I'd implicitly trust with my life. "You actually managed to retrieve her," Tracy muttered under her breath as she snapped on a pair of latex gloves. "Saw her husband's nauseating posts on social media just days ago. All those saccharine devoted spouses' pictures. Like he's some kind of modern-day saint. All calculated falsehoods," I confirmed quietly. Tracy rolled her eyes with undisguised contempt. "I pegged him as garbage immediately. Men like that drip narcissism with every calculated step." She proceeded to examine Joanna's injured ankle, her expression quickly turning grim. "Madison, this isn't a simple sprain. This is indicative of direct trauma, blunt force, likely resultant from a significant fall or impact. Your daughter didn't merely trip. Someone inflicted this injury upon her." I met her gaze steadily. "I know, Tracy. I'm not concealing anything. I need your assistance obtaining proof. She received initial treatment at Cedar Falls Memorial. I need access to her records." Tracy raised a skeptical eyebrow. Not through official channels, you won't. Not without Joanna's explicit written consent, which I assume is currently unobtainable. However, she paused, considering, I might be able to probe the periphery of their system. See if anything pertinent is accessible, perhaps misfiled or left unsecured in the digital corners. I handed her the crumpled, torn medical report I'd retrieved from Joanna's nightstand. She bent over it, her finger tracing the faint text. Coda lines, definitely generated by Cedar Falls Memorial, Neurosurgery Department, judging by the notation. My heart seemed to stutter for a second. Neurosurgery. Joanna hadn't mentioned that specific detail. Tracy frowned, noticing my reaction. Do you want me to attempt contact with the attending physician? I can likely excavate a name from the system. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Do you know anyone employed there? Someone on the inside? Unofficially? Tracy cast a quick sideways glance around the small clinic room, then lowered her voice significantly. My cousin secured a transfer there last year. Works the front desk registration in the ER. Let me see what information I can discreetly extract. A small measure of relief washed over me. I felt like I could finally draw a less constricted breath. I just need anything, Tracy. Records, dates, prescription details, even a simple screenshot of an admission log. If I can obtain something tangible, I can engage a lawyer. Tracy nodded curtly. Understood. But exercise extreme caution, Madison. If this man possesses even a modicum of intelligence, he'll initiate efforts to trace your movements as well. I gripped the torn report tighter, my voice emerging flat, cold with determination. Then let's ascertain who operates with greater speed. Tracy proved true to her word. By the following afternoon, a text message illuminated my phone screen. Record located per intake query. Imaging data registered in system. Cousin managed to capture a screenshot. I was seated on the weathered wooden bench in my backyard. When I opened the message, my hands trembling slightly as the image loaded. It was grainy, pixelated, yet clarity wasn't essential. I instantly recognized Joanna's name and the admission date, the precise week she had claimed to have merely slipped and fallen. The screenshot depicted a scheduled scan marked incomplete. The reason required no speculation. Todd would never have permitted her to undergo such a definitive diagnostic test. What did this incomplete record signify? It meant her injuries remained officially undocumented in full, yet the hospital system retained a crucial registration record, tangible proof of her presence and initial assessment. That alone was a start. I instructed Tracy to attempt contact with the physician who had attended to Joanna, requesting he call me if willing. That evening, my phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. Hello? Am I speaking with Joanna Miller's mother? The voice on the other end was calm, measured, imbued with professional gentleness. This is Dr. Patrick from the Cedar Falls Memorial Emergency Room. I served as the attending physician the night your daughter was admitted. He paused briefly. Your daughter stated she had fallen, but clinical presentation raised suspicions regarding potential domestic violence. Her demeanor was notably evasive, and she adamantly refused to identify any involved party. Consequently, we were only able to log a preliminary report. Subsequently, her husband contacted the hospital to cancel all scheduled follow-up appointments. My grip tightened on the phone. That preliminary report, doctor. Is there any conceivable way I could obtain a copy? He paused again, the silence stretching. Officially, procedural constraints dictate that only the patient herself can request medical records, requiring a signed release form. However, his voice softened slightly. I comprehend the complexities of your situation. I can prepare an informal treatment summary, a basic notation outlining her condition upon arrival. It will lack formal legal standing, but it will constitute something. I understand. I replied, a surge of gratitude. That is all I require for the present moment. I will transcribe it manually, on personal stationery, he stated decisively, and I will fax it directly. No official hospital system involvement. I recognized the inherent risk he was undertaking for us. I provided him with Tracy's private home fax number and expressed my profound thanks. As I ended the call, I finally felt the smallest, most tentative easing of the relentless pressure within my chest. But at that very instant, miles away in Cedar Falls, Todd stood frozen amidst the wreckage of his meticulously controlled living room, his expression hardening into granite. The apartment had been ransacked, drawers pulled out and left gaping, couch cushions overturned, the space beneath the bed swept clean. Yet, the one item he sought with frantic intensity, the medical report he had been certain Joanna never possessed a copy of, was irrevocably gone. He snatched his phone, dialing building security, his voice low, seething with suppressed fury. "You assured me this building maintained 24-hour surveillance. Pull the camera footage, Tuesday night, between 8 and 9 p.m. I demand to see precisely who entered through that front entrance and who traversed my hallway." He disconnected the call abruptly, his gaze falling upon a sticky note adhered to the kitchen counter, a sequence of digits scribbled in faded ink, familiar yet not his own handwriting. That number, the access code Joanna had mentioned once, dismissively, in passing. "In case Mom ever needs to come." Todd's eyes turned glacial. He opened his laptop, swiftly searching my name, cross-referencing voter registration databases with known associates. Spring Hill. Seconds later, the address flashed on his screen. He walked out the door, purpose radiating from him like a cold aura. When I stepped back inside my own quiet house, Joanna was curled on the couch, still wrapped in the blanket, gazing absently out the window. A subtle clarity had returned to her eyes, the fog of fear receding slightly. "Seeing me?" she asked softly. "Mom, are you all right?" I sat beside her, retrieving the screenshot from my bag. "Sweetheart," I began gently, "we've secured our first piece of concrete evidence." She offered no verbal response, simply leaning over to rest her head wearily on my shoulder. "We still face a considerable journey ahead," I whispered, stroking her hair. "But I promise you this, you will not walk it alone any longer." She nodded almost imperceptibly, murmuring a quiet, "Thank you, Mom." Just as I was about to offer further reassurance, my phone buzzed urgently. A text from Margie. "Strange man called my landline just now. Said he was searching for your daughter." Tone felt wrong. She didn't need to specify a name. I knew. Todd. He was moving faster than I'd anticipated. I didn't share the message with Joanna. She had only just begun to tentatively eat again, to sleep through the night without being jolted awake by panic. I refused to drag her back into that suffocating fear. Not yet. Instead, I calmly slipped the phone into my pocket, rose from the couch, and proceeded to methodically close every curtain in the house. I double-checked the lock on the kitchen door, then leaned my weight against the sturdy front door, throwing the old, heavy deadbolt. This house lacked sophisticated security systems, but in the face of encroaching danger, every resonant click of solid metal offered its own form of primitive comfort. Then, I walked purposefully to my bedroom, opened an old cedar storage box, and rummaged deep within its contents. I retrieved a weathered address book, its pages softened with age, and flipped through until I located the entry, Dr. Patrick. I dialed the number listed, his private line. It went directly to voicemail. I left a message, my voice low and steady despite the tremor in my hand. "Hello, Dr. Patrick. This is Joanna's mother. I received a credible warning from a friend. Someone is actively searching for us. I cannot be certain if he will attempt to contact you directly, but if he does, please inform him you possess no authorization to release any medical information whatsoever. You previously offered for assistance, it desperately needing." As I hung up, I realized my palm was slick with cold sweat. The next morning, I consciously projected an aura of normalcy. I prepared breakfast as usual. Frying eggs, I added an extra pinch of black pepper. Joanna had only ever favored them that way as a young child. While the coffee brewed, I tapped the percolator lid a little more audibly than strictly necessary, small mundane sounds, intended to subtly reassure her of my presence, anchoring her to the safety of the moment, reminding her she wasn't isolated. She emerged from her room wearing a new sweater I'd bought her, looking marginally better, still fragile, certainly, but her posture seemed steadier. "Mom," she began slowly, hesitantly. I've been thinking, perhaps I should report him. I paused, momentarily taken aback. Are you certain, Joanna? She nodded, then immediately shook her head, conflicted. I don't know. It's just, I understand that running isn't a solution, but I'm terrified. If I file a report, he'll escalate. He'll become worse. I sat beside her at the small kitchen table, my voice low but firm. You don't have to make that decision today, sweetheart. But there is one thing we can do. We are going to meticulously gather everything, every shred of evidence. We'll seal it all within an envelope, store it somewhere absolutely secure. Then when you feel ready, whether that means contacting the police or consulting an attorney, you will possess the necessary tools. Her eyes filled slightly, a faint redness creeping around the rims. Did something happen? She asked in a near whisper. You seem different today. I hesitated, then offered a carefully edited version of truth. Nothing has happened, sweetheart. You are safe here. I promise you. Just entrust the rest to me. She didn't press further, simply stepping forward and wrapping her arms around me tightly. For a long, silent moment, we held on to each other, drawing strength from the embrace. Meanwhile, in the heart of Spring Hill, a nondescript gray sedan cruised slowly down Main Street. Todd sat behind the wheel, one arm resting casually on the open window frame, his eyes methodically scanning the sleepy storefronts and tree-lined sidewalks. He had spent the entire morning obliquely inquiring about my address, circling the small town twice, meticulously learning its layout. Stationed outside the local pharmacy, he observed me exiting with a small bag containing first aid supplies. He didn't exit his vehicle. He simply raised his phone, captured a quick photograph, then opened his messaging application and typed, "She's in Spring Hill." But he didn't press send. Instead, he deleted the message, a flicker of calculation in his eyes. That evening after dinner, I sat beside Joanna on the sofa. "Sweetheart," I began gently, "I spoke with my cousin. She owns a lovely guest house near Eugene. There happens to be an unexpected vacancy this week. It's a very quiet location, beautiful natural views. I thought perhaps you could go there for a few days, get some proper rest, away from everything." Joanna paused, processing my words. "You want me to leave?" "No, not permanently. Just for a brief respite," I clarified, already beginning to fold some of her clothes into a small overnight bag. "I simply don't feel comfortable allowing you to remain here any longer." She frowned, confusion clouding her features. "But didn't you assure me Spring Hill was safe?" "I wasn't untruthful," I replied, meeting her gaze directly. "But sometimes, the places that feel safest are also the most predictable, the easiest to locate." She hesitated, clearly wanting to argue, but ultimately, she just nodded slowly in acquiescence. The next morning, I booked her a bus ticket under a neighbor's name for anonymity. As Joanna stepped onto the coach, I stood steadfastly at the curb, waving until the large vehicle rumbled out of sight around the corner. Only then did I turn and walk away. But my path didn't lead home. Instead, I crossed the street to an old-fashioned cafe nestled beside the hardware store. The proprietor was an old high school classmate, now retired, running the establishment with quiet competence and possessing a remarkably long memory. I leaned in close across the counter. "Did anyone happen to notice a gray car around here today? License plate ending in 623? He looked up from wiping down the counter, nodding slowly. "Yep, parked directly across from your place this morning, stayed put for about 15 minutes. My breath caught. "Did he approach the house? Knock on the door?" "Nope," he replied nonchalantly. "But someone did tail your daughter for about half a block after she left." I absorbed this information, letting the cold reality settle. "Thank you," I murmured. As I stepped back out onto the sunlit sidewalk, a realization dawned. My footsteps felt steady, grounded. I wasn't fleeing anymore. I had taken the necessary precautions. And now, I was prepared. That evening, I watered the vegetable garden, carrying on with routine as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of lavender and rose. The air was still, quiet. And that's when Todd finally materialized. He wore a wrinkled shirt, standing just beyond the low garden fence, his voice calling out softly, deceptively gentle, "Susan?" I turned slowly, my expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk," he stated, his tone reasonable. I deliberately dried my hands on a nearby rag, then walked towards the fence, maintaining the physical barrier between us. My voice, when I spoke, was calm, devoid of inflection. "You're searching for my daughter." He attempted a small, conciliatory smile. "I'm merely concerned for her well-being. She is safe," I stated evenly. "You removed her without informing me," he countered, his tone hardening slightly. "You didn't involve the police, didn't notify any authorities. That could be construed as kidnapping, Susan. Illegal detainment, interference with a medically vulnerable adult." I refused to take the bait, cutting him off, my voice steady as bedrock. "Have you ever paused to consider why she didn't inform you?" His manufactured smile faltered. "She doesn't wish to see you, Todd. She is afraid of you." I took a deliberate step closer to the fence. "You genuinely believe I am unaware of what you have done? You possess no proof," he asserted, his voice dropping low, menacing. "Are you entirely certain of that?" For the briefest fraction of a second, something flickered deep within his eyes, raw panic, before being swiftly masked by arrogance. "You're merely her mother, a retired housewife. You cannot possibly prevail against me." I held his gaze unflinchingly, my voice never wavering. "I don't need to prevail against you, Todd. I simply need to ensure that you lose." He stared at me for a long, charged moment, his jaw working, a muscle twitching near his temple, a movement that could have been a suppressed smirk or a clench of fury. Then, abruptly, he turned and walked away. I remained rooted to the spot until his gray sedan turned out of the alley and vanished down the street. Only then did I finally allow myself to exhale, releasing the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Back inside the quiet sanctuary of my house, the fax letter from Dr. Patrick lay neatly on the kitchen table. The paper was thin, already showing faint signs of yellowing at the edges, but the handwritten script was crisp, clear, and unequivocal. Patient Joanna Miller. Suspected domestic abuse. Multiple contusions and bone fractures noted consistent with significant trauma. Recommend psychiatric evaluation and establishment of independenship. I folded the document with extreme care, slid it into a protective sealed plastic bag, and locked it securely inside my desk drawer. Then came the step I had been meticulously preparing for, filing an official report. I stood on the concrete steps outside the Spring Hill police station, gripping the plastic evidence bag tightly in my hand. The late afternoon sunlight pressed down on my skin, yet I felt no warmth, only a cold resolve. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I pushed open the heavy glass door. Behind the front desk sat a young officer, perhaps in his early 30s, bearing the weary expression of someone who had endured too many protracted shifts. His name tag read, Reed. "Ma'am, can I assist you with something?" he inquired politely. I placed the plastic bag firmly on the counter between us, my voice calm but unwavering. "I am here to report a case of domestic abuse and illegal surveillance. The victim is my daughter. The abuser is her husband, Todd Miller." He glanced down at the contents visible within the bag, the doctor's handwritten diagnostic summary, the grainy screenshot confirming her intake, a written statement from Tracy detailing her observations. "Everything here points towards long-term abuse and systematic psychological control," I stated plainly. He nodded slowly, carefully removing the documents from the bag, and began reviewing them page by page, his expression serious, as if assessing the narrative's coherence. "Where is your daughter currently located?" he asked. "She is residing with family members in a secure, undisclosed location," I replied. "She is willing to cooperate fully, but she is not yet emotionally prepared to return to this vicinity." He frowned slightly. "You understand, ma'am, that without her personal statement, officially signed and witnessed, none of this constitutes sufficient grounds to file formal charges? These documents strongly support a potential case, but they do not, in themselves, constitute a case. I bit down hard on my lower lip. Did you actually read the doctor's summary? He explicitly documented suspected domestic abuse. Suspected does not equate to confirmed, Officer Reed stated, not unkindly, but maintaining his procedural stance. And regrettably, in domestic cases, the legal lines can often become complicated. My voice dropped an octave, becoming quiet, cold with suppressed fury. Her ankle was fractured when he violently pushed her down a flight of stairs. Her face required stitches beneath her eye. She awakens nightly whispering, "Please don't lock the door." Does that sound complicated to you, officer? He paused, casting a quick glance around the station to ensure privacy, then lowered his voice. "Ma'am, I'm not suggesting I don't believe you. Personally, I do, but strictly adhering to protocol. We require more substantiation. I can initiate an initial situation report based on your testimony and these documents. If you can persuade your daughter to contact us directly via phone, we will officially record her statement and append it to this file." I nodded curtly. "She will call. I will ensure she calls today." By the time I stepped back out of the station and into the fading sunlight, the back of my shirt was damp with perspiration. I climbed into my car and immediately dialed Joanna's temporary number. Her voice, when she answered, sounded steadier than I had anticipated. "Mom? Did you file the report?" "I did," I confirmed. "I provided them with everything I currently possess. They haven't opened a formal case yet, but they are willing to officially document your phone call as corroborating testimony." There was a brief pause on the line. Then she stated firmly, "I'll do it. Just tell me precisely what I need to say, and I will say it." I fell silent for a beat, struck by the change. She, who used to dread phone calls, especially any conversation, even tangentially related to Todd, was now willing to speak, willing to have her voice officially heard. "You don't have to recite what I tell you," I said softly. "You simply need to tell the truth. Your truth." Across the state, Todd sat hunched in a booth in the dimly lit alley behind a nondescript bar, gripping his phone with such intensity it seemed liable to fracture in his hand. He had just concluded a call with Cedar Falls Memorial Hospital's administrative office. The voice on the other end had been distant, polite, yet unyieldingly firm. "We have been contacted by law enforcement personnel regarding your wife's recent emergency room visit. All associated documentation is currently being preserved under legal hold. Nothing can be altered, removed, or accessed without official authorization." His jaw clenched violently. He understood now. Susan was actively making her move. But he refused to capitulate quietly. Early the next morning, Joanna placed the call to the Spring Hill police station. Her voice trembled slightly at the outset of the recording, but each word resonated with newfound clarity and conviction. "This is Joanna Miller. My husband, Todd Miller, has subjected me to repeated instances of physical and emotional abuse. He confined me within our apartment, effectively severing contact with the outside world. He confiscated my phone, routinely deleted my call history, and restricted my communication. He exerted control over my medical care and records, threatening harm against my mother if I sat beside her as she spoke, listening intently to every word, every slight inflection. Her facial muscles occasionally twitched, her jaw clenched reflexively at certain points, but she pressed onward, unwavering. "I am currently staying with relatives of my mother at a safe location. I am fully willing to cooperate with the ongoing investigation and hereby authorize the police department to access any and all of my medical records pertinent to this case." On the other end of the line, Officer Reed's tone shifted perceptibly. "We will update the file accordingly and immediately submit a request for preliminary approval of a protective order based on your statement and supporting documentation." When the call concluded, Joanna turned to me, her eyes clear. "Mom," she said simply, "you provided me with the courage. I am finished with hiding. I refuse to retreat back into that shell." Meanwhile, at Cedar Falls Memorial Hospital, Dr. Patrick had already submitted a comprehensive, legally prepared medical summary to the hospital's internal legal department. This time, the file was explicitly marked legally admissible and included Joanna's electronically captured authorized signature obtained during a secure follow-up telehealth consultation. It contained copies of her ER imaging scans, detailed nurses' logs, the physician's written assessment, and, most critically, a digitally recorded segment of their conversation from that initial night, during which Joanna clearly stated, "My husband pushed me." Todd's prior attempts to illicitly request Joanna's medical records were also meticulously documented and appended to the official report as evidence of potential obstruction. That complete, validated file was securely faxed directly to the Spring Hill Police Department at 4:30 that afternoon. Officer Reed called me back shortly thereafter. "Mrs. Dawson," he began, his tone professional but carrying an undercurrent of satisfaction, "we have received the formal certified medical report from Cedar Falls Memorial, along with the recording of your daughter's official statement. We have submitted the complete package to our superiors. The department will now launch a formal investigation into Todd Miller. Furthermore, a temporary protective order has been officially issued, Mr. Miller. Furthermore, I didn't speak for a moment, simply exhaling a long, slow breath, as if releasing weeks of pent-up tension. "Thank you, officer," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Don't thank me," he replied kindly. "This outcome was achieved because you refused to give up. You protected your daughter, and in doing so, you protected yourself." That evening, a courier from the station delivered the official protective order documents to my doorstep. I called Joanna immediately with the news. That same night, she boarded a bus from Eugene and came home. Later, seated at the familiar kitchen table, I opened a bottle of robust red wine I hadn't touched in years. Joanna walked in quietly from the living room. I looked up, meeting her gaze, a soft light entering my eyes. "Today," I said, my voice gentle but clear, "you spoke the truth. In your own voice, for the very first time in a long time." She froze for a fraction of a second, absorbing the weight of my words. I gently slid a wine glass across the smooth wooden table towards her. We both smiled, a shared understanding passing between us. Together, we raised our glasses. The day Todd received the official summons from the police coincided, ironically, with his 37th birthday. Word later circulated that he had planned a celebratory dinner with friends that evening, intending to announce his recent investment in a burgeoning tech startup. A flashy maneuver designed to publicly mark a prosperous new chapter. However, around noon, a uniformed police officer appeared at the door of his downtown office and formally presented him with a document sealed in official red tape. "Mr. Miller," the officer stated calmly, "you are currently under formal investigation for allegations including domestic violence, psychological abuse, and attempted medical record tampering. We require your full cooperation moving forward." Todd didn't erupt in anger, not then. He froze momentarily, then emitted a cold, flat laugh, devoid of humor. "She's fabricating everything. She's mentally unstable. You're basing this entire charade on an informal handwritten note, for God's sake. That report has since been amended, certified, and legally submitted by the attending physician," the officer replied evenly, unfazed. "Furthermore, your wife provided explicit authorization for the full disclosure of her medical records during a recorded statement. Multiple official documents now corroborate a consistent pattern of alleged abuse." Todd fell silent, his gaze dropping, fists clenching so tightly at his sides that his knuckles turned stark white. This time, there would be no manipulating the narrative, no silencing the truth with superficial charm or coercive control. The very ground seemed to be shifting beneath him, and he was powerless to halt the erosion. Meanwhile, Joanna and I sat in a quiet, sterile meeting room on the third floor of a downtown law office. She wore a simple, soft cotton blouse, her hair neatly tied back in a low ponytail. A trace of pallor still clung to her complexion, but she sat noticeably straighter, more composed than she had appeared in weeks. Across the polished table sat Ms. Harper, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney Tracy had recommended. Specializing in domestic abuse cases, she possessed an air of brisk efficiency and wasted no time on pleasantries. After rapidly flipping through the stack of documents we provided, she looked up, her gaze direct. The police have already secured a temporary restraining order, which is a positive first step. Once the district attorney formally files charges, we can proceed with civil action, pursuing damages for emotional distress and petitioning to freeze a significant portion of his assets. Joanna spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Will I be required to appear in court? Harper nodded curtly. Most likely, yes, at least once for a hearing. However, you won't need to provide detailed testimony at that stage. Simply confirm your identity and your willingness to provide evidence should it proceed to trial. We will handle the majority of the speaking. I reached across the table, squeezing Joanna's hand reassuringly. You are not navigating this process alone. Joanna looked at me, her eyes momentarily glassy, but the tears didn't fall. Not this time. A week later, the local news outlet picked up the story. The headline read, Suspected coercive abuse case enters legal process. Mother aids daughters escape from controlling environment. They refrained from explicitly naming Todd, but anyone acquainted with him immediately recognized the accompanying profile photograph, his distinctively stiff jawline, that signature tailored coat, the familiar side angle, all unmistakable. That evening, my phone rang. It was Margie, her voice practically effervescing with excitement and vindication. I knew that man was fundamentally flawed, she declared triumphantly. I am so profoundly glad the truth is finally emerging. Seeing your daughter safe and free, Susan, I am just immensely proud of you. I smiled genuinely into the receiver. Thank you, Margie, especially for sending that warning text when you did. If it hadn't been for your timely alert, I might have hesitated, might have been too late. She clicked her tongue dismissively. Nonsense. Next time you're nominating heroes, ensure Neighborhood Watch MVP is included on the ballot. We both laughed, and for once, the laughter felt clean, unburdened, not merely a mask. Todd did not, in the end, evade accountability. Police investigators uncovered several incriminating emails within his archived inbox, messages he had dispatched to administrative staff at Cedar Falls Memorial, requesting the correction or removal of inaccurate records pertaining to Joanna's visits, even obliquely offering compensation in exchange for their cooperation. These emails became pivotal evidence for the prosecution, unequivocally confirming his attempts to obstruct the investigation. With Joanna's formal recorded statement bolstering the comprehensive medical evidence and witness accounts, the police submitted a full recommendation to prosecute. The court approved the motion without hesitation. The subsequent trial was not protracted. During the hearing, Todd's defense attorney attempted to portray the events as unfortunate consequences of intense emotional conflict and regrettable accidental harm. However, this narrative rapidly disintegrated under the weight of the corroborated medical records, diagnostic summaries, phone recordings, and the meticulously constructed, consistent timeline of events. Every fabricated excuse crumbled upon scrutiny. He avoided a prison sentence but received 2 years of supervised probation, mandatory enrollment in psychological counseling and anger management programs, and stringent public behavior restrictions. His true punishment, however, manifested elsewhere. The investors involved in his heralded tech venture abruptly withdrew their funding. The company's board convened an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove him from his position. His once vibrant social media presence, previously buzzing with professional connections and feigned friendships, fell utterly silent overnight. Some former associates even expediently deleted photographs featuring him from their profiles. No physical prison bars confined him, yet he faced the slow, inexorable public erasure of a man who had arrogantly believed himself untouchable. Joanna chose not to attend the trial proceedings. That day, she sat quietly in our backyard, the gentle morning sun warming the small wildflowers blooming near her feet. She sent me a text message. Mom, I couldn't bear to witness his downfall directly. But knowing you are present, representing truth, that provides me with sufficient closure. I replied simply, "You are alive, sweetheart. That is the ultimate victory." When spring arrived, breathing new life into the landscape, we relocated. Not to hide, not to disappear into anonymity, but simply to begin charting a new course, walking in a fresh direction. We found a quiet house situated near the edge of a tranquil forest, featuring a small balcony where the morning light slanted in perfectly each day. Joanna began enrolling in online courses focused on trauma counseling, slowly, painstakingly rebuilding a gentle rhythm to her days. I signed up as a volunteer at the local town library. Sometimes I read aloud to children during story hour. Other times I quietly reshelved books in the hushed stacks. Both activities felt strangely, profoundly healing. One ordinary afternoon, Joanna and I were out purchasing groceries. On the sidewalk ahead, we observed a young boy diligently holding an umbrella over his mother during a sudden downpour. The umbrella was comically small for the task. The boy was getting drenched while ensuring his mother remained dry beneath its meager protection. I glanced sideways at Joanna. She was watching the small tableau unfold as well. Then, a soft, gentle smile touched her lips, unforced, serene. And in that precise moment, I knew, with absolute certainty, she had returned, not merely in physical presence, but in spirit. The authentic Joanna, the kind, clear-eyed, quietly resilient young woman I remembered, was here again, standing beside me in the gentle rain. People occasionally inquire, "How did you manage it all?" My response remains consistent. I accomplished nothing truly extraordinary. I possess no law degree, have never been affiliated with any formal women's rights organizations. I am neither wealthy nor influential. I reside in a small, unassuming town, and fundamentally, I am just a mother. But I possess one unwavering conviction. I never ceased believing her. Even when the world, including my own son initially, dismissed her experiences, labeling her dramatic, fragile, or unstable, I knew deep within my core she wasn't delusional. She was wounded. She wasn't inherently broken. She was tenaciously surviving. No, I am not a hero. I am simply someone who stood steadfastly behind her daughter and refused to leave her side.